Good afternoon. I'm Heather with the Institute of Child Nutrition, and I would like to welcome you to the August 2023 CACFP 101 webinar on managing your food safety plan. As a reminder, during today's webinar, all attendees will be muted. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it in the question box on your screen. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but due to our time constraints, every question may not get answered during the webinar. After the webinar ends, a link to complete a short survey will appear. Please complete the evaluation survey. 24 hours after the webinar, individuals who have registered will receive a follow-up email. The email contains a recording link of this webinar available on iLearn, which is ICN's online learning platform, and a link to the evaluation survey in case you missed the pop-up link. ICN will send out webinar certificates of attendance within 24 hours, and due to the nature of this webinar, the slide deck will not be shared with our attendees today. The webinar will only be available in video format. The learning objectives for today's webinar is to recall best practices and tips for implementing, managing, and updating your food safety plan, including proper food storage, sanitation, and handling food recalls. The views and opinions expressed in this webinar are solely those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Institute of Child Nutrition. Lisa Bradley is our guest speaker today. She is the CACFP coordinator for Early Childhood Alliance in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They are a sponsoring organization for homes, unaffiliated, and affiliated centers. She has been with Early Childhood Alliance for over 13 years, and prior to joining the agency, she was in restaurant management and taught as an adjunct faculty member at Ivy Tech Community College in the Hospitality Management Program. Lisa has an Associate of Science in Hospitality Management, double majoring in Culinary Arts and Baking and Pastry Science from Ivy Tech, and a BA in Management from Trine University. She is a Serve Safe certified. She's actively engaged in the Farm to ECE program and the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network, and enjoys teaching providers hands-on cooking and food safety sanitation that will make their days and menus more enjoyable. So without further ado, here's Lisa.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Bradley. It's very nice to be able to be with you guys today. I want to give a big shout out to all of the helpers that have got so much support from ICN. Heather and Brad have been absolutely phenomenal. Today, we're going to be talking about food safety and sanitation. And the biggest thing I'd really like to go into before we even start is to remember our why. For me, everything that we do at CACFP involves the kids. So that's going to be the background behind talking about everything from our food plans to the storage and safety, because it all comes back down to remembering that we're doing this for the kids. And the reason why it's so important, especially with food safety and all, is because children with foodborne illnesses, they're more vulnerable to foodborne illnesses than most adults are. Their immune systems are still developing. And one of those things is that because they get a foodborne illness, they are at serious risk for dehydration and fluid loss, which makes it that children are under 5 or 3 times more likely to be hospitalized if they get a salmonella infection. And kidney failure strikes 1 out of 7 children under 5 that are diagnosed with E. coli. So we're working with really vulnerable immune systems right now. So to keep them as safe as possible, we're going to look at different ways that we can help out in our homes and our centers. Again, I'd like to go through today's learning objectives with you. To recall the best practices and tips, as Heather mentioned, for implementing, managing, and updating food safety plans, including proper storage, sanitation, and handling of food recalls. Wanted to put the graphic up there for you really quick for the food safety plan and these 3 parts that are going to be a part of that plan. Before we really get into talking about what a food safety plan is, we do have a poll question. Our first poll question is, how do you feel about your food safety plan? 1, I feel great. 2, I'm working on it. Or 3, I need some help. We'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and put in your choice there. Okay, that's great. Our results are in, and 56%, I feel great. This is so good to hear. I'm working on it's another 37%. And for the 6%, we're going to talk today, and you probably are going to feel a lot better after, because you may have a lot more done than you think you do have for that food safety plan. So what is a food safety plan? This is some of the things that they are and what they definitely aren't. One, it's a great training tool for your staff. If you have staff, being able to have something that they can reference and look at is really, really important, especially when we're talking about something as important as food safety. Number 2, it's easily changeable. We know that things change really, really quickly in our world, so it's very easy to adapt and change our food safety plan. They're simple and they're direct. Really quick procedures on how we do things and how we handle things. It's really, really something easy that we can just jot down. And there's something that we can share with parents. As a parent, it really, really does me good to know that where my child is going to be in care, because they're there an awful lot up to, we see these little ones sometimes more during the week than moms and dads do. So we want to be able to share with their parents, that give them that extra feeling that their little ones are safe in our care. What they're not is hard. Don't get overly involved in terms of, I run down rabbit holes sometimes where they, but, we're going to stop, because they're not hard. They're also not scary. It's going to be something that we can learn, really, really quickly. It's stuff that we usually do on a daily basis, and they aren't time consuming. So looking around at those answers, we can go a little bit more in depth to exactly what is a food safety plan. The biggest thing to remember with the food safety plan is it's a written document that tells whoever wants to know your plan that you're assuring that the food you prepare is safe for the children in your care. I want to emphasize that it's a written document, because so many things live in our heads all the time. Everything that, we know that we're doing, we do it because we know how to do it. This is the proper way. It's just a question of writing it down. So with a written document, that way we can share it with anybody who asks. A food safety plan covers day-to-day situations, like cleaning and sanitizing your kitchen, your dining spaces, food storage, food preparation, and meal times. We have all of the little things that we do that add up to make our food safety plan. One of the really big things to remember with a food safety plan is it's a living document. We did not chisel it into stone, so we can't make it change. You can make changes to this anytime you want. Sometimes we have infants, sometimes we don't have infants. Sometimes we have special little ones with allergies that we need to make allowances for, in terms of looking at how do we keep them extra safe if, when food allergies are involved. We receive new information all the time. The USDA does an amazing job of making sure that all of our information is updated. So we want to make sure that we can incorporate that into our plan. We have different information regarding cleaners. We want to make sure we take care of those things. So food safety plan is something that, since it's a living document, we can make those changes as soon as we need to. So when we're looking at a food safety plan, we want to look at the different parts that we've laid out for the presentation. Many of you have already done this. That's the biggest thing to remember. Many of you already have these, but some of us just haven't written them down yet. Like I said, a lot of my things take space in my head. They just need to make it out there. I did have a state reviewer once whose best words of advice to me were, documentation is better than conversation, because I have a document I can refer to. So we're going to be looking at a couple of different things today. Food storage. When we get into food storage, we're also going to be looking at food prep a little bit, because Food storage is very, very important to our plan, how we take care of our groceries when they come into us and what we do with them. Also, we're going to put a little bit of food preparation into there too, just to cover a few more things in our plan. Sanitation, huge for us. We know that with our little ones, keeping the hands clean and all sorts of things is really, really important. And handling the recalls. We have a lot of recalls that are coming up.
Lisa, Lisa,
Yeah.
pardon my interruption. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties hearing you. If you could get a little closer to the laptop so we can hear what you're saying, we can hear
Okay,
some of it, but some of our friends are commenting that you're cutting in and out. So I apologize for interrupting you.
that's okay. And I'm really sorry about that too.
No, that's okay. That's better. So lean in for
All right,
us.
I'm leaning in, guys.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the heads up, guys. I'm leaning in a little bit, and sometimes, believe it or not, I can get a little bit quiet. It doesn't happen really often. Trying to make sure that we're respecting our time too, because you guys have given us, hey, thank you very much. You guys have given us an hour worth of your time that's so important in your day. So want to make sure that you can hear me and oh, you guys make me feel so loved. Thank you very much. We're going to look right now at something we talk about all the time. Yes, we're back. Hand washing. When we look at it, even like Sound of Music, we start at the very beginning. A very best way to start right now is talking about when keep food safe is hand washing. Hand washing is a key to stopping the spread of germs. I think we're all pretty familiar with that, and the last couple of years have definitely reinforced our hand washing. Hand washing, the keys to stop spreading germs is we're going to wet our hands, we're going to lather our hands, we're going to scrub for at least 20 seconds, or happy birthday. If you sing really fast like me, 2 choruses will work for you. And then we're going to rinse those hands. After we rinse the hands, we want to use a paper towel or let them air dry. If we're using the same towel that everybody else is using, there are chances that maybe some of the germs could kind of come back to our hands. When we're talking about food safety and sanitation, one of the things I really wanted to emphasize is before we really start anything, we always start by washing our hands. So when we're looking at food storage, there are so many things that happen with our food before we even sit down with our little ones at the table. Now, I know that grocery shopping is not the most exciting things that we do during the day, but we grocery shop or deliver. Sometimes we could take advantage of different grocery delivery things, which was one of the things that the last couple of years has brought to us, that our groceries can come right to our door, which is pretty exciting for me. But one of those things we need to watch for is that temperature safety zone. They do a really good job from what I've heard. I've never actually used the services because as excited as I am, I actually like to go down the aisles of the grocery store. But I also know that I have to get home. I carry coolers with me, different ways to put things so that I can keep my cold food cold. This is nothing like other parts of the country in terms of that heat in Indiana is nothing like the heat for those that live down south. But we want to make sure that we are maintaining that temperature safety zone, that our perishable food is not out in the heat for more than when we have cooked food, it's not out in a danger zone for more than 2 hours. We want to make sure that we get our groceries home as fast as we can. When we get our groceries back home, we're going to put them up and we're going to go in the order of the frozen, the cold, and then we're going to work at our dry storage. So when we're looking at making sure we take care of those things, we're going to go frozen, get those back under freezer as quick as we can. We're going to go back into cold, get the refrigeration back up, and then we're going to look at our dry goods because we know that those can wait. When we're looking at our storage areas, we've got 3 different things that we want to talk about in terms of storage areas. In our houses or in our centers, it's all just going to depend. We're going to have these things in this, the size is going to depend on where we work. In our freezers, we want to make sure, and this is going to pop up everywhere for you guys, so I'm just going to give you a warning, temperature control. Our freezers need to be freezing 0 or below. If we have a walk-in freezer with shelves, which most of our homes don't have, we want to make sure that those bottom racks or extensions is off the floor. We also want to make sure that they're not stacked all the way to the tippy top too. When we look at our items that we brought in, we want to make sure if we're in a center setting where we're getting cases of things, it's really important to date when we receive things. So that way we know what's coming in and what's going out. When we're looking at our food storage, rotating our items is really, really important. Whatever comes in first goes out first. Things have a limited shelf life, and there is those times, I don't know how you feel, but I really am kind of scared sometimes to go to the back of my refrigerator at home because I just don't know how long things have sat there. We definitely don't want to take that chance in childcare. So we want to make sure that first in and first out are very important. Our refrigerator, we're definitely going to be looking at, yes, you guessed it, temperature control. We want to make sure our refrigerator is 40 degrees or lower, but not lower than 32. There's nothing more disappointing than coming in after you've got everything all planned to find out that your lettuce is frozen because it's mostly water and our refrigerator was a little bit too cold for that lettuce. Or serving milk slushes make it a little bit challenging in the morning when we need to serve milk for breakfast. So we want to make sure that we're in that safety zone for temperature control. The refrigerator is another spot where we're rotating items. We want to make sure that nothing sits in there too long. We're rotating first in, first out. We're making sure that we're following our menu to the letter sometimes can't work. Sometimes we have to be adjusting as we go. We go open the little veggie drawer and some things that we were planning for lunch don't exactly look like they were when we picked them up at the grocery store. So we know we have to make changes, but rotating those items as quickly as we can are really, really important. Another thing with our refrigerator that really needs to remember is storing by shelves. When we put our food in our refrigerator, we need to know what goes where. And we need to be able to label if we open the packages by what goes where. I want you to picture your refrigerator. On the very top shelf, we're going to have our, oh, those are really cool. Thanks for all the science, guys. We want to know what goes where. Very, very top are going to be those things that will not spoil. Those things that are either ready to serve, ready to eat, won't spoil, safe. The further down the refrigerator we go is going to be the more, for lack of a better way, to make sure that things don't drip on each other. Very bottom, think of the bottom shelf of your refrigerator, chicken, ground meat, anything that might leak, anything that might cause a mess, because if it's up on the top shelf and it can drip all the way down the shelves, you've contaminated everything in your refrigerator. We want to make sure that, even the whole cuts of meat, if we're going to do a roast, we're going to do something like that, it's on the shelf above the ground meats. Our fruits and our vegetables, being a fruit or veggie crisper or on, the second shelf area. So we know that as we go down, the more potential danger in the foods that we have for being a problem for foodborne illness are going to be as low as possible. When we're thawing foods, really quick, another show of our emojis. How many of us remember going to our grandma's or somebody there and the way they thawed the meat for the day was they put it out on the counter? Yep. They put it right out on the counter and that's where it was going to stay. So we've got all of this meat on the counter thawing for the day. We can't do that. We now know that these things are super dangerous for us. It's because it doesn't take very long for bacteria to jump in there and get a hold. So we want to make sure that we're being as cautious as we can. Thawing foods in the refrigerator, plate under them, where we need to thaw them in terms of making sure nothing drips into another spot, is the safest way to go. If we're going to do something when we really need to, you forgot to pull out anything, cold running water for some things is a way to thaw also, but not for everything. So we just want to make sure we're thawing things again in the safest way possible. Remember way back to remembering our why, it's all about the kids. It's about how can we keep them as healthy as possible. Dry storage. Not all of us have those great big pantries that I would love to have. I have a closet. It's great. But in my closet, I make sure that it doesn't get too hot in there. Because sometimes, no matter how confident I am about things, oh, sometimes we get involved in sticky messes. It gets too hot in there. The temperature is going really off. And this time of year, we like ants. They come in the house. All these little things that could possibly come in when we have a window or things open. So dry storage is a big thing to make sure that we're watching for pest control, making sure that no little buggy friends get in there, making sure things are closed tightly, making sure that if we take them out of original packaging, that we put them into a good storage container that we label. You know, all of our food that we get in has an expiration date. Making sure we can carry that expiration date over is really important. So we know, okay, this has been sitting here a while. How long has it been sitting here? One of the things that I can definitely suggest is let's not combine the flour that I just bought today with the flour that I just bought, I can't remember quite when, because chances are we'll put the new flour on top of the old flour, and we don't know how long things are going, because believe it or not, flour can go bad. So we want to make sure that, again, the first in, first out rule is great. We want to make sure that when we have our cans, we're rotating our cans. So we're using the cans that we had brought into our homes or our centers first. We're also making sure that those cans are sound and secure. When we're looking at food storage, we want to make sure that aluminum cans don't have any bubbles. There's no dents. There's no sign that there could be any leaking or, you know, any way the can could have been contaminated. Remember again that when we're in dry storage area, we're talking about things. We also can't, for food safety reasons, we can't can on our own and serve that to the kids in our care. So there's too many risks that some of you might be phenomenal canners and do great preserving. Some of us may not be quite as good at those things. And even if we are good, you never know. Little things that can impact the safety of our food are very, very small. So we want to make sure that we're keeping things as safe as possible. We talked about food storage and making sure that we have our freezers, our refrigeration, and our dry storage taken care of. Everything needs to be at least 6 inches off the floor. One of the big things I want to share, sometimes say 8. One of the things I'd like to put into a lot of the storage rules and things like that, I'd like to also add that depending on where you're from, you might want to check the local guidelines. Your local county and state guidelines might be different because we spread over the entire nation. So what might be done in Fort Wayne, Indiana may not be done in another part of the country. So when we're looking at food, I would like to go really quick, some hand in hand here, over to food preparation. When we're looking at food prep and cooking, these are really important things to remember in terms of clean, separate, cook, and chill. The 4 steps we want to do. Clean is a huge one. We want to make sure that we are taking our care to clean our fruits and veggies before we eat them. We even want to clean them before we peel them. One of the things with doing that is because we clean them first, a little scrub brush on them, making sure that the fruits and veggies are good. Because if we don't, the minute we use the peeler to peel things, we are taking whatever could be on the peel right into the actual fruit or vegetable that we're going to be eating. Several years ago in Southern Indiana, we did have an outbreak, which is going to tie in great when we talk about recalls. We did have an outbreak with cantaloupes being contaminated. There was E. coli that was involved. And a lot of people were getting that because they did not quite clean the cantaloupes well enough. And the minute they cut through the cantaloupe to section it off to serve, if they didn't scrub that well enough, whatever was on the outside of the cantaloupe got drugged through the rest of the fruit. So we want to make sure that we're cleaning these things. Other thing to think about is there are some things that we don't clean, some things that we don't rinse off. Meat being one of them. Meat, we're going to be able to cook to temperature to keep that safe. Separate, we want to make sure that we're separating our food products and items when we need to in the refrigerator. We want to make sure that if we're cutting things, we want to do it separately. We want to make sure that we're using different cutting boards, different, so we can't possibly not drag anything with, raw chicken coming through something and then have our raw chicken, then have our veggies there. We want to make sure that they can't get contaminated anyway like that. We want to make sure that when we are separating things and we're starting to cook things, that we're definitely cooking to temperature. Remember, going back to our why, those foodborne illnesses, when things are not fully cooked, are really, really important. You'll be able to find information through so many amazing ICN classes and the printouts that we can do for posters in terms of cook time and what the cook time suggestions are to thoroughly cook chicken all the way up to gravy. So when we're cooking, we also want to make sure, how many of you guys have done it really, really quickly at home where you need a plate and you didn't rinse the plate and you don't want to try to put a plate there, and oh, you never want to put cooked food back on the plate where the raw food was. So it's best just to bring, an extra plate out when you're doing any cooking there. And chilling as the last of our steps. We want to make sure that if we have anything left, that it goes back under refrigeration quickly. We know that the CACFP, we don't serve leftovers. It's not something we do. But on occasion, we can cook twice or cook once for 2 meals. It's not a problem at all if we know that today we're going to use our chicken for fajitas and tomorrow we're going to use it for chicken salad. So we're going to cook off all the chicken breast right now. So the meat that we're going to be using for tomorrow, we want to make sure that after it cools, we get it under refrigeration and chill it quick enough, because it only takes a small amount of time for the first germs to grow right in there. The cooking temps, again, everything has a different cooking temp, and we want to make sure that we bring it up to that temperature. Holding temperatures are really important too. We want to make sure that everything stays hot enough if it's on the hot food. Remember to keep hot food hot and cold food cold. Again, cleaning our produce is huge. Anytime that we cut into produce that's not cleaned, we're going to be bringing whatever's on the outside into that produce. Rinsing our grapes are really important because there's so many things outside of the grapes. Our apples, that pretty waxy color sometimes is, well, wax. We want to make sure that we get all of those things rinsed off. Cross-contamination is a huge issue in terms of food safety. I can't stress enough how dangerous it can be to have something that we've got a little one that might have an allergy. We want to keep things separate so he can still or she can still eat the meal, but we want to make sure that we don't cross-contaminate using, fish is a big allergy right now, using fish, cutting fish on one board and then using the same board to cut our vegetables. Different examples like that. It could even be one vegetable to another. Knowing who we're cooking for is really, really important. But just having a system where we're not going from, a protein product right into a different product that we could risk cross-contamination with is really big. When we're looking at all of these items, this is where we're actually doing the cooking and prep. And the reason why I really wanted to stress cooking temperatures and everything like that is it's summertime. And we know that sometimes we like to take our kids on a picnic. We also know that we like to go on picnics on occasion. Family barbecues and everything like that are coming up. We want to make sure that the food that we bring to serve, either the children in our care or our relatives, stays safe. Want to make sure that it's not out there, not under refrigeration or chilled at some point in time, and that to get everything as safe as possible, we make sure that we are giving the best that we can to keep that food safe at all times. All righty, so we're going to cover sanitation really quickly. And one of the big things with sanitation is within 3 parts. It's actually sanitize and disinfect can be looked at as a combine. We actually, do 2-step sanitation when we're working with our providers. One of them is clean. Soap and water. There are some approved food safe cleaners that some other state agencies and cities and counties would be okay, but remember, it's got to be food safe. Soap and water work great. When we clean, if we don't clean, but we sanitize, we're just sanitizing our germs because we never took them off. We're just sanitizing our dirt. If we clean but don't sanitize, we haven't taken the step to kill the rest of the germs. So soap and water are another proof cleaner. We want to make sure that we are working on all the food surfaces that we work with, the tables, the countertops, everything that we need to work with and keep clean. And then we want to make sure that when we sanitize, there are a couple of different ways that we could look at sanitizing. One of them is you can look at chemical or heat sanitizers. Heat would be in your, you think about heat, that would be more in your like dishwashers and things like that, that hot temperatures gets hot enough that they can actually help sanitize them. One of our sites has a temperature, has a dishwasher that the actual sanitized cycle goes over 230, I believe. Not something you want to try to grab the dishes out of really quickly when they're done. Chemical sanitizing is another way to look at it. And there are lots of chemical sanitizer products out there. Again, we got to look at the point that we're looking at things that we food or food surface safe if we're doing it around anywhere we're going to eat. Also, when we're doing those chemical sanitizers, what we want to be able to do is make sure that A, it's still working, and B, it's enough and not too much. Probably the most common sanitizer that we see used is bleach. One of the biggest things we like to stress with people with bleach is if I can walk in and smell your bleach water, you've got too much bleach. Your concentration levels are really, really low and they don't need to have something, because if you think about it, think about the smell of bleach and how much it affects us as adults. Then think about being 5, much smaller and sitting much closer to the table that we just bleached and breathing in all of that. Bleach is very, very, difficult for their systems. So we want to make sure that with the bleach water that we're getting just the right amount to do the tables and the counters and everything like that. Now, bleach water is also going to be, if we're using it for something else in our homes, we could use it at a different concentration, because we know that there are multiple things that we're going to be cleaning, but we're talking specifically about CACFP and about our food areas and all. Now, there are other chemical that can be used. One of them is a quat sanitizer. We do need to check and make sure that those concentrations are good. We need to make sure that there's enough of the chemical, the water disbursement, that it falls in line, and you can get chemical test strips that work with quat and other, almost every chemical sanitizer that mixes with water. We want to use a test strip to make sure that the parts per million work out, so we don't have too much and we definitely have enough, because if we aren't using enough, then we're just going through the motions, which is really, really defeating our purpose of wanting to keep everything as safe as possible for our kids. Cleaning and disinfecting are 2 of the most important steps that we can take to help keep our food areas safe for our kids. We want to make sure that everything that we do is a normal procedure and a normal occurrence. So they know that, there's got to be a set time on the table. So if Miss Heather is going to spray the table down right before, they are not going to touch the table, so it gets that chance to air dry to make sure it stays there. We need to make sure if we're using a food safe approved by your state agency, local city or anything, that if it says to let it sit on the table for X amount of time, we want to make sure that it sits the whole time. There are a couple out there that I saw sit on a table for 10 minutes. That's really difficult at lunchtime when you've got 10 5-year-olds. So we want to make sure that we're using the products that will help us get our job done at the same time, get it done as safely as possible for our kids. When we are looking at the next part of our talk, we're going to cover really quickly recalls. And actually last night, there was just a recall that was on the national news. When we're looking at recalls, foodborne illnesses are what's going to be driving the recall. And the foodborne illness occurs when 2 or more people get the same illness from contaminated food or drink. We do hear a lot about this in the restaurant industries, making sure that everything is fine, but we also see a lot of it in things that we come from the grocery store. When this happens, public health officials work quickly on state, local, and at the federal level, and the CDC gets involved. They will get involved also and help determine the source. Do you remember earlier when we were talking about the importance of scrubbing our produce in the cantaloupe? That was something in southern Indiana that the Indiana Board of Health, the Kentucky Board of Health, as well as the CDC got involved with, because it went over state lines to find out what was going on and to determine where the origin was. Multiple times when we've seen recalls, we've seen everything from lettuce to different produce that have listeria. Big recall items are also something that happens when a specific product is found to be contaminated. Remember I said last night I heard of a recall? It is on Nestle's Nestle's baked cookie dough, the one that you put into the oven and break it into little bits. They found wood in some of those, so they're doing the recall on that. So a recall can be manufactured or government originated. Nestle is the one that put, I know, right? I saw the O space. Yeah, it was pretty sad because I do, like the Nestle Snow Baked Cookies. And it was pretty shocking to find out that, the manufacturer did pull this. When they do that, they give the lot numbers, the dates, the times, everything that's on that little package for recalls. You can receive alerts for recalls. If your product is in use, you definitely want to, if you're using the product on a regular basis, make sure that you hold on to it so you can go through, and we'll talk about what to do in case of a recall in just a couple minutes. But you can receive alert on new recalls. Through the CDC, you could definitely sign up for on their website for product recalls. It keeps you up to date on what's going on. A lot of times that we'll see recalls if it's a national recall, it's going to probably be something like the Nestle, something that will look at a produce that is originating from another state coming into multiple states. It'll tell us what date, what dates to watch for. We've had instances where, as Heather mentioned, I worked as a restaurant manager. We've had instances where when spinach was bad several years ago, any product that we had was spinach because we couldn't determine exactly, we knew it was from that area. We had to, get rid of all of the products just to be on the safe side. A lot of times product recalls are just to be on the safe side. We want to make sure that everything we're doing is as safe as possible. When you do have a product recall, it's really important, if you know that something was recalled that you've used, to notify your parents. As a parent, I'd like to know that there is a possibility there, but I know that you've taken all of the precautions that you need to. I definitely want to return the product to the place of purchase for a refund. Hold on to your receipts if you haven't eaten that, and dispose of the product following the directions of the recall and the recall notice to make sure no one will consume it. Yes, it is true. Nestle's Toll House Cookie Bites did hit the trash because just in case I wanted to be safe yesterday. And you've already prepared the food item in your kitchen, you still have it in your refrigerator. It's important to throw out the food and then to clean your kitchen, especially like if it's in your refrigerator. One of the things that we were talking about food storage is also going to be right here in the recall is periodically making sure that we're really deep cleaning everything. Our refrigerators, our freezers, our dry storage, we're doing our shelves, make sure everything is continually cleaned on a regular basis. But for product recall, if we've got something that we're throwing out, we want to make sure that any place that that particular product is, we've taken care of getting it all cleaned up. Now, after we've talked about all of those, we're getting ready to go to questions and answers, but we have another poll for you. All right, here's poll number 2. After we've talked about all of this, how do you feel about your food safety plan after viewing this webinar? 1, I feel confident that I'm doing everything right. 2, I feel confident that I'm heading in the right directions. And 3, I feel confident that I know who to ask for help. Give you a few moments in there. As Heather mentioned, this PowerPoint will be, if you sign on, available. There are some resources tagged in that PowerPoint then. One of them, great resources, is CDC. Oh, cool. Check your chat, people. Everybody, Heather put a really great thing there. Hey, I'm loving it. The 2%. We are down from 6 to 2. 54, everything is right. 44, you're going the right direction. And 2, feel confident to know who to ask for help. Hopefully that is confident you know to ask for help because you've moved to another category that you feel confident that you're already doing what you need to do. For folks that are looking for resources and help there, I can definitely recommend. ICN will not steer you wrong in any way, shape, or form. They've got great food safety courses that we suggest all of our providers do. Your state, local, and county board of health will also be of help. The CDC's got great websites, and so do the USDA. FDA will have some information for you, and you can get your name on those recall lists so they can email you recalls when they don't hit just the big national news. So, all right.
That's some really great information, Lisa. Thank you for all that. I really like the remember the why, and also documentation is better than communication. Those are good things to remember. We do have some time for some Q&A. So if anyone has some questions that they would like to ask Lisa, you can do so now. And if you guys, we'll see what we have in here. Give them a few minutes to ask some questions, and then we'll move on.
Have I really, huh?
I said I don't see any. That's a good thing.
No, I really appreciate it. Everybody joining us.
So one of the questions that we have is a food safety plan the same as an SOP plan, which is a operating procedure? So you can address that if you would like.
Actually, it's part of your operating procedures. It could be embedded into, because when you're looking at your operating procedures, you may include more than just your food safety. It could be a part of your standard operating procedures. Because you're probably also going to have your attendance, your any attendance you have, any parent manuals you have, any financial information that, you know, when people need to make their payments and all, your food safety plan could definitely part of the standard operating procedures. It can be a part of, in addition to a wellness plan as well.
Excellent. Another question we have is, what's the best way to wash produce?
Oh my goodness, I wash produce. I've got a cute little scrub brush. I'll admit it, I'm pretty big on my cute little scrub brush for like my cantaloupes and things like that. I run it under running water. There are a couple of products out there that are food safe, but if something is particularly, like cantaloupe is particularly icky in terms of mud on there sometimes, I will use that to help with scrub brush on that. Rinsing is really a big part of it. I rinse in water, and you really don't want to put anything chemical on it because to clean it, because we're trying to wash the chemicals off of it. But warm water, you know, is great, or cold water, and scrub brushes. Some of the chemical people, you know, are really encouraged by some of the like light veggie cleaners and all too.
Right. Another question is, what is the difference between leftovers and better to cook twice?
Okay, leftovers. In CACFP, we can't serve a meal, then take the leftovers and serve it again. For me, cook once, serve twice means that I have my menu planned, and I know that there are certain things like a chicken is a great example, chicken breasts. If I know that today I'm doing fajitas, and then down later this week, I have something else using chicken, it could be chicken noodle soup or anything else we want to. If I know that I have to cook the chicken breasts off for one meal, I'll cook twice the amount so I have the other meal already cooked. It helps with your prep time for the other meal. So we're not serving, you know, we're not serving the kids leftovers because we definitely don't want to do that. But we do have the cooking already done for one. I'm a big one, thanks for the thumbs up. I'm a big one for how many steps can I go to get ahead of, the cooking that might happen, later on during the week. Because we do know that working with little people, our moments change as fast as you can imagine and on a dime. So being able to cook a little bit ahead is a big saver.
I think that is all the questions that we have. I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day, Lisa, to share with us on food safety and your expertise. And I appreciate all the things that you bring to the table. And I also want to thank our viewers today for joining us. And this concludes today's webinar. I hope you guys have a great day.